All right, trying something new again. Thought I would pull some cards last night during the full moon energy and see what comes up and see how this blends with the full moon energy of last night. So the full moon was in Capricorn, which is the opposite of Cancer. Now, normally the full moon is in the opposite sign of the last new moon. The last new moon was a Gemini, but because it happened in the very late degrees of Gemini, and the moon switched from Gemini to Cancer the next day, or very shortly after the new moon happened, we had the full moon in Capricorn. Therefore, we're getting the new moon in Cancer after the full moon in Capricorn. Usually it's the other way around. So there's some Gemini energy that was pretty prominent in the cards I got. So I wanted to talk about it, right? So this is very, very Gemini. This is Buddha. Okay, the Sanskrit name for Mercury is Bud. That's the name Bud. And Bud refers to our intelligence. And so Buddha in this card is not really meaning so much the person Buddha, like the historical person of Buddha, but this just means someone who's aware. The Buddhi is connected to the Buddha. So the Buddhi is our mind and the power of our mind and the power of discrimination. So something to think about for the next couple of weeks is about letting go of judgment and being aware of the details. And Mercury it's a dual sign, and it's really neither male nor female. It's very neutral. And it has to do with our intelligence, not only intelligence, but curiosity and our ability to look at things, all sides of something. So it's not black and white, it's really into the nuance. So this is just saying, don't take things at face value. Don't be afraid to take them apart. Don't be afraid to dissect them. Because if something doesn't make sense, if you can't explain something to somebody in a few concise sentences, then you may not have understood it. And that's the best way to know if you understand something, is if you can explain it to somebody. That's the test. So Buddha is here to remind us always keep at using our intelligence when we're trying to make decisions on things. The second card that came up, this is from a Yantra deck that I have. It's a bunch of yogic goddesses, tantra goddesses, from the Yantra wisdom deck. So this is Bhagavad. Bhagavad is the yogini of stillness. And I believe this came up because we are in the midst of a Saturn retrograde. Saturn retrograde is a time when we slow down. I mean, Saturn is already the planet of things that are slow, things that take time, the pressure of time. And so with it going retrograde, these things, we take even more time. We're taking things even more slow. We take things even more careful. We consider where we're committed to, how we're going to use our energy. So there's really nothing quick about the energy right now in a big way, right? So she's the yogini of stillness. It's said to use our mind and observe. So this goes back to Buddha, right? This goes back to the Buddha card. This goes back to that new moon in Gemini, right? So we're trying to understand these things. We're trying to understand what's going on around us, the questions we may have. And another message from this card is that we get the answer in the stillness. This is not the time to rush things, not the time to do things in haste. This is the time to sit still, listen, and that the answers will come the more still we are. This is not the time to chase after anything like that. And then lastly, the last card I got, this is a really neat Bhagavad Gita deck that I have, right? There's key verses from the Bhagavad Gita in this deck. And I pulled this one. It's called Material Elements. It's chapter 7, verse 4. Now, chapter 7 of the Bhagavad Gita is a chapter which is about how to see God in the world. Krishna is talking to Arjuna on the battlefield, instructing him on how he has all these lists of how you can see him. He's like, he says things like, of fishes, I am the shark, of the mountains, I'm the Himalayas, things like that. And so this is at the beginning of the chapter when he's talking to Arjuna about how to see him in the world. So this is what he says. He says, my material nature is made up of 8 separate energies: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. So connecting this to astrology is pretty fascinating because of how astrology, how Jyotish, which is the study of how spirit becomes matter. So how does spirit become matter? And the first level of that are what's called the bhutas, or the 5 elements: the earth, water, fire, air, and ether. These 5 elements mix in different combinations that recreate the doshas. If you're familiar with Ayurveda, the doshas, Kapha, Pitta, and Vata, are all different configurations of the 5 gross elements. From the doshas, then we get into the gunas. The gunas are the different flavors of material energy: goodness, passion, ignorance. There's a lot of words for those, but goodness, passion, ignorance, they color everything in the material world. And when you take the bhutas, the doshas, and the gunas on all the different possibilities of combinations with that, then we get the planets. And the planets are considered to be incarnations of Lord Vishnu, which is why Krishna is talking about them. So it is related to astrology. So the planets are the combination of the gunas, the doshas, and the bhutas. And then after we have the planets are the signs and the houses, which is how we get astrology. So this is reminding us when we're talking about the planets, and that they're not just these dead matter beings. They're actually alive. They're here to teach us lessons. They're here to give us wisdom. They're forces of intelligence. And then also we have the subtle elements: mind, intelligence, and false ego. So this goes back to the Buddha, the Bud, the mind, the intelligence, and the false ego. So these are the things that we can't sense with our gross senses, but the mind and the intelligence and false ego is how we perceive the world, how we're connected. It's how we see the world. It's how we, the clearer our mind is, the more we do our spiritual practices, the more we can be clear and focused and see the world through our mind. If our mind is clear, if it's agitated, then we're going to see the world in an agitated state, right? We see the world as we are, not how the world is. So those are things to think about as we're moving through this full moon in Capricorn, and we'll have the new moon in Cancer in 2 weeks, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that then. All right, thanks a lot.